When is Grace Fellowship reopening? You know, that's one of the most common questions I receive these days. And here's the answer. We are never reopening. I hope you all are hearing that. We are not going to reopen because we've never been closed. Now, before you throw rotten fruit at me and accuse me of playing word games, please hear me out. This is not mere semantics, and it's not word games. What I'm telling you is biblical truth. Grace Fellowship is not closed and has never been closed. You say, now wait a minute, Pastor. I went one Sunday to the building and it wasn't open. Oh, you're talking about the building. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the church. You know the church is not the building, right? I feel we need to use this moment to make a powerful theological point. The church is people, Christ-following people, people saved by the grace of God and filled with the Spirit of God. That's the church. It's never been, it never will be a building. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit lives in you? Did you hear that truth? He said, you, the people of God, are the temple of God. Paul said to the Athenians in Acts 17, verse 24, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by hands. So, the message couldn't be any clearer. God doesn't dwell in our buildings, but He does dwell in us. And that's why the church has never been closed and honestly doesn't need to reopen. Oh, I know some of you are annoyed right now. But because I'm a preacher and a teacher of biblical truth, I just had to make that point. Grace Fellowship is alive and well, letting our lives be our ministry wherever we go. We're sharing the gospel, speaking the truth, loving our neighbor, helping the hurting, representing Jesus well wherever we go. We don't need a church building to do that. You're serving God at your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your family. Buildings or no buildings, we will never stop being the church of the living God. By the way, understanding what I just said is key. It's key to really appreciating the dynamism of God's true church. We must never limit God's work to what happens inside our church buildings, because that's just a tiny fraction of His amazing work. Now, I hope you're still listening. Get this, we are also called to gather as the people of God. Hebrews 10:25, for instance, reminds us not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. So, there you have it. We're called to gather and be the church of God as we worship Him. We're also called to scatter, notice those, gather and scatter and be the church of God on mission. Both, hear me, both of those are very, very important. Now, with that understood, let's now address that question of when will we regather in our buildings? During Governor Cuomo's daily briefing on May the 20th, he announced that beginning Thursday, May 21st, religious organizations can have gatherings of up to 10 people while following social distancing guidelines. Now, as of the filming of this video, Thursday, June 4th, we do not have any additional information from our governing authorities regarding when gathering restrictions will lift. Social distancing guidelines will ease up, no information about that, or if and how New York State's phased reopening plan will impact religious organizations. So, where does that leave us? In the absence of comprehensive data, Grace Fellowship must exercise patience and wisdom. Our team is evaluating updated New York State guidelines daily, and I mean that literally every day. And at all times, we're committed to making decisions that will allow us to represent Jesus well to the capital region and beyond. And with the limited information we have right now, Grace Fellowship has opted, at least as of today, this could change in the coming days, weeks, but as of June the 4th, to not set a physical regathering date. We don't believe it wise to make a bold declaration. I know some would be really happy with that, but it's not wise to make a declaration about a date when we'll regather in our facilities again. We simply don't have the data to guarantee that kind of promise. I think you understand that. But when we get the data, when we get the information we need, hear me, we will move prudently and decisively. I assure you of that. Additionally, as of today, June 4th, we do not plan to open our buildings for gatherings of 10 people or less. We just don't believe that doing so would result in effective ministry. But let's say that threshold grows. Let's say it grows to 50 people or 100 people that can come together in the buildings. Is that really, think about it, is that really the kind of regathering you long for? To open our doors under those restraints, we would need to severely limit our activity to abide by social distancing guidelines and keep our congregation healthy. Imagine this now. Go with me here. Imagine you come to the service, but there are no hugs, no handshakes. You can't really touch anything. All you can do is give people a holy wave from at least a 6-foot distance. And when you sit in the sanctuary, you'll have to be all spread out with at least 4 chairs between your family and the next individual or family, and with whole rows, at least one whole row in between you. Do you really want to come together again like that? I'm not sure I do, like that. If you sing, your singing will be muffled behind masks during worship. And remember, there's no hanging out in the lobby unless you're at least 6 feet apart. Boy, I don't think that's what we call meaningful fellowship. Also, there would be no children's ministry in the building because you simply can't socially distance children. Because of the restricted numbers in our worship centers, it would likely lack energy and that enthusiasm that you've come to expect at Grace. We'd have to monitor the number of people going into the sanctuary, which would mean we'd have to ask some who came to please return at a different service because by law, we can't accommodate you right now. Can you imagine rejecting someone who doesn't know Jesus Christ at our door? Personally, I can't imagine the horror of that. We're learning, by the way, from churches who've reassembled across the country that speedy regathering doesn't result in the enthusiastic and joy-filled services that congregants may expect. Rather, churches have found themselves relatively empty as their people prefer to only engage in large group experiences slowly and after an abundance of caution. We hope to learn from others' experiences rather than repeat them. And because of these realities I'm describing, and they are realities, it's difficult to imagine regathering in our buildings until we can meet at numbers close to or at full capacity. I don't know about you, but when we do regather in our buildings, trust me, we will regather, and that's going to be so awesome. I want to do so with a roar, not with a whimper. But a whimper is all you're going to get with the current restrictions. Now, I know you're sick of this pandemic. We're all sick of it. We've had enough. We want this to be over, and regathering feels like such a relief. But what I'm saying to you is that regathering in our buildings is perhaps not as grand as some of us may have imagined under the current restrictions. You say, but Pastor, I miss my friends. I want to see people again. I really miss the meaningful fellowship of being together with brothers and sisters in Christ. I hear you. I really, really hear you. I believe there's a hybrid approach we can follow that will help meet a lot of these needs and more. Until we can regather in full force or pretty close to full force in our buildings, I strongly encourage you to start coming together in homes. Practice appropriate social distancing, but meet together in homes to watch Grace at Home services online. Watch the service. Discuss it over a barbecue lunch. Engage fully in relationships. You know, Acts chapter 2 says the early Christians met in their homes and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. Since the early church did this, let's model that same kind of fellowship during this time of uncertainty and transition. Pastor Matt and Nikki Saxon recently did exactly what I'm describing. They hosted 2 couples in their home last Saturday night for the worship service with dinner following. And Pastor Matt says he was shocked by how moving the worship was. He had sort of assumed everyone would just passively watch, but as he fried falafel in the other room, he heard everyone loudly and earnestly singing their hearts out. He turned the corner to peek and saw hands raised in worship right in their living room. And Matt says it was honestly more moving for him and Nikki than any large group worship experience in recent memory. Many of you could do that very thing in your own home, and it would be powerful. So think about that. Now, I can imagine that those listening to this announcement will have a variety of responses to the statements I just made, probably depending on your life experiences, really. Some of you may think, thank goodness you're not regathering immediately. I'm not coming back anytime soon until I know it's safe. Some of you feel that way. Others may say, are you kidding me? I'm dying here, Pastor. I want Grace to regather like yesterday. You know, this whole topic of reopening church has very quickly become an emotional and politicized issue on a national scale. On Friday, May 22nd, President Trump ordered states to reopen churches. Amongst some of the brightest political minds in our country, this has sparked a heated debate on the constitutional power of the executive branch of our government and the power of individual states. On the basest, most practical level, this debate has not resulted in clear unilateral legislation regarding whether it's safe and reasonable for churches to regather in every state. This debate has also caused division, by the way, and in some cases, animosity between followers of Christ who hold different convictions regarding how churches should interact with local and national governments, the importance of brick and mortar buildings, and how intimately churches should align themselves with social movements. Dear Grace Fellowship family, there is absolutely a place for healthy debate. There really is. But I implore you, please, do not allow the intensity of public debate to cause you to hate or resent your fellow believers who may believe a bit differently from you. Keep the main thing the main thing. Grace Fellowship, by the way, is the church home of Democrats, Republicans, and a host of other political affiliations. We have doctors and nurses and medical professionals who are, as we speak, working one-on-one with COVID-19 patients. We have immunocompromised and vulnerable populations whom we deeply desire to protect. We have business owners who are doing everything they can to keep their employees employed. We're a beautiful and diverse community, jam-packed with a variety of convictions, backgrounds, and opinions. And let me tell you, I love being a part of this Grace family. So let's extend grace and compassion to one another during these unprecedented times and trust that God is truly sovereign and has a plan that will prevail despite COVID-19. So please regularly check into gracefellowship.com, our social media pages, and our weekly email. We will continue to post updates as we have them over the coming weeks and months. And in the meantime, since God lives in you rather than in buildings made by human hands, let's keep on being the church. Our mission is as relevant as it ever has been: more and better disciples. Grace Fellowship is alive and well. The church is still the church. COVID-19 hasn't stopped God from working in and through the Grace family and in our world.